on the agenda, Councillor Fletcher raised a matter that had been taken up with her by the Albert Eden Board, and with the suggestion this might be discussed as an extraordinary item. There has been a chance for Councillor Fletcher to talk to Phil Wilson over the lunch break, and if I can get Phil to just comment on the outcome of that discussion, which I think gets us to where we want to go.
Your Worship, I have had that opportunity. I've also had the opportunity to talk to local board, finance and communication staff. There's some detail and complexity around the question that's been asked because it goes to the consultation approach for their long-term plan. I'm going to suggest to you that, by way of recommendation, that we don't do an extraordinary item here and now. It needs more work and some fuller advice. Having said that, it seems that the local board chairs gained an impression that the governing body had made a decision, or the finance committee had made a decision that limited the local content that would be apparent in the consultation material for the long-term plan. I don't believe that's true, having spoken to a number of people, so I'd just like to clarify that firstly. In fact, what the board chairs gave voice to was a number of concerns. There was a concern about the hearings that's been mentioned earlier. There was a concern about not continuing with the idea of a summary document besides the consultation document going into every letterbox. But actually there is absolutely strong local content going to be built into the consultation material for the long-term plan, and it will cover the one initiative and an opportunity to canvass a few other of the key priority initiatives and issues that are at a local level. Having made those inquiries, I think you should be satisfied that that is the case, and we will come back and backfill with some more detail in due course.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That deals with that matter. Thank you very much, Phil, and we'll look forward to progress being made in that area.
Excuse me, Your Worship, is that going to be communicated back to the local boards?
I will undertake to clarify back to local boards.
I think there was more than one local board. I think Ōrākei may have had a similar concern, and maybe Kaipātaki. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Phil. We come now, ladies and gentlemen, to the final item on the agenda, which is the changes to the governing body committee structure. I've made a couple of changes in the recommendations after consultation with colleagues. In regard to the Value for Money Committee, I did have an endeavour to talk to as many councillors as I could yesterday, but a lot of you were, I was not able to get hold of. So I'd just like to note there my intention to establish a Value for Money Committee, and that I will report back to the governing body in the new year. So that I'll try to have a discussion with every member of the governing body on that, both on the terms of reference and the nature of the committee, so that when we come back for discussion, everybody is fully informed and has had a chance to have some input on that. On recommendation D, the changes to the terms of reference are by and large reasonably technical and minor, but a suggestion has been made to me through Councillor Darby to make the changes that are set out in D1, and that will apply to both the Planning Committee and the Environment and Community Committee. So in terms of the change in membership, I indicated that I would come back a year after we set the committees up. I've made some changes, often at the request of councillors, and sometimes where there were vacancies and sometimes where needs had changed. So what I'm recommending, sorry, let me move the recommendation first. So I've got on the book. I'll move those recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Yep. Councillor Deputy Mayor Cashmore has seconded it. We had a vacancy on the Planning Committee with the resignation of Councillor Denise Lee. I am putting Councillor Richard Hills into that vacancy. On the Community Development and Safety Committee, 2 councillors excuse me, have indicated that they are flat out with other committees and have asked to be relieved of the responsibility, Councillor Ross Clow and Councillor Desley Simpson. We could increase the number of that committee if there were other people that wanted to go on it, but if not, we'd reduce the quorum to 6. And it's been suggested to me, just with the pressure that officials are under, to reduce that committee. I think it meets 5 weekly, but to reduce it to 6 weekly. Strategic procurement, just to confirm Bill Cashmore as he was acting chair of that committee. Civil defence and emergency management. Richard Hills has asked to come off that committee, and I'm suggesting Councillor Wayne Walker, if he's willing to go on to that. Appointments and performance review, making member David Typery a member of that committee. Regulatory, placing Bill Cashmore as the deputy chair of that committee. The independent panels, with Denise Lee going off the Ethnic Peoples Advisory Committee, Alf Filipina has kindly offered to do that, but I should just mention that, and with my apologies to Councillor Casey, that as the overall chair of that, I'm sure she won't have any particular difficulties with your offer to fill that role, but if I can ask Kathy to conduct that process before I make the formal appointments.
She twisted my arm, Your Worship, so...
So okay, so that's been done.
It's confirmed.
The Seniors Advisory Committee, Linda Cooper has a clash and can't continue in that role. And again, I'd ask Councillor Casey to work through whether they're volunteers for that. I've had one interest signalled from Councillor Newman, and thank him for that. But if I can get Councillor Casey to take responsibility for that and come back to me on it. Hauraki Golf Forum, Chris Darby is asked to step down from that. Councillor Fletcher, I wondered if you would be interested in that with your intense interest in the golf. Maybe you'd like to think about that and come back to me on it. The other positions held by Denise are more specific to her particular ward, and I'm suggesting that we hold those positions open until February, until a by-election has been held, to see if there is interest from the new ward member in taking up those positions. I think that makes sense. The only other change is that the Auckland, the World Masters Games have now gone, so the Goodwill Ambassador's position for that has gone with it. That was fulfilled very kindly by John Walker. So you've got the recommendations in front of you. It's been moved and seconded. I'll just ask if there's any questions first of all. Questions from Councillor Fletcher first of all.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've got a couple of queries that I'd like to put to you. This opportunity to have a look at the governance arrangements is also an opportunity for us to actually find a definition of what a workshop is. Because I think one of the impediments that we actually have in the performance of our committees can often be impacted on by a lot of workshops that sometimes take precedence over committees. And so I just wondered whether you had given any consideration to actually trying to define what a workshop is and what the criteria for holding a workshop might be. Because I personally believe that committees should hold precedence over workshops. You know, the two should be complementary. And so that was question number one. The second question I have of you relates to the delegations and the accountability for our CCOs. At the moment, we've got the Appointments Committee, we've got the Planning Committee, we've got the Finance Committee with oversight on the Statement of Intent. And I've wonder whether when we come to make the really important decisions around the directors that we want to act as our stewards for the CCOs, we really have to have a much clearer oversight of where the gaps are, where the skills, the competencies that they're looking for, and really the oversight on how the CCO is tracking. So it has been, as you know, of concern to me for some little time that this fragmented approach that we have to CCOs and the appointments of directors and performance, I just wonder whether you had given that consideration. And then thirdly, I note under the working parties, there's no reference to the World War I working party, and whether that is required in the governance structure or not, I don't know. So I just thought I would ask for your comment on those 3 points.
Okay. If I begin with the last one first, we can add the World War I committee, and thank you very much, Councillor, for the work that you've been doing on that. So that's no problem. In relation to the second point, well, let me go back to the first one you made, workshops. I appreciate that this year's been pretty demanding for a lot of councillors with the Auckland plan and the 10-year budget. There have been a heck of a lot of workshops. They are not predominant over committees. Committees are the decision-making body. Workshops are purely there to inform, to allow discussion and debate in a confidential and free and frank environment preliminary to the matter going back to the committee. I personally have found the workshops really valuable. I think there has been a lot of them, and some workshops, I would admit, were more informative than others. I have asked the Deputy Mayor to just keep in touch with councillors about workloads, about workshops, about what you think is good, what you think could be improved, how you think it might be changed. But fundamentally, we wouldn't change the long-standing concept of having workshops for discussion and debate, but not decision-making, and then when we've been through that process, to go to the committees and make decisions. The third area that you've raised with me is the CCOs. I think it remains relevant to have the appointments committee make those appointments as it does in other areas. The CCOs on subject matter go to the Planning Committee and to the Environment and Community Committee, and of course the financial reporting goes to the Finance Committee. Equally, we've been holding in the last year the Scan the Horizon meetings, which most members have said to me have been pretty useful. I actually think we've had CCOs in front of our governing body members more frequently than probably at any time in the past. So generally the feedback I've been getting from councillors is that they find that useful, and the chance to ask those questions directly, and even to get the CCOs turning up at things like the Independent Maori Statutory Board when there's an issue involving them, so that there is that sense of accountability and an exchange of information. But put them all in one committee, that would not be my intention at this point.
Mr. Chairman, on the issue of a definition of a workshop, I think it would be helpful for both the officers as well as the councillors and members of the IMSB, if we could, and I appreciate we have our standing orders and so forth, but there, as you have conceded, there are some workshops that are more productive than others. Some have become opportunities for just presentation of material to elected members. Some are interactive. Some, there can be a whole range of different types of workshops, and I wonder, and the question that I posed to your senior officers in your office was, have you given consideration to actually having a business case put to someone who holds the gatekeeper role for having a workshop, so that time can be allocated accordingly? Have you given consideration to that?
Just to answer your first question, the definition of a workshop apparently is in our governance manual. I don't know if Marguerite's got it there. or we'll have it
No,
there.
I recognise
Yeah,
that that is there,
yeah.
but it doesn't actually deal with
Yeah.
the
Look, I'm-
variation that we get.
I'm happy to get feedback from councillors. Nobody wants to go to meetings for the sake of it. We all go to more than our share of meetings. So where you've got some feedback that you want to input, the specific reason that I've asked Deputy Mayor Cashmore to look at this is that I'd got some feedback from you and one or two others that the number of workshops were quite high. So I know that the Deputy Mayor would be very willing to get your input on what it is about the workshops you find most valuable, what it is, or not only the workshops, actually, in the wider governance role of this council. If there are things that you think this council might have been doing it for years, but that's no reason why we'd keep doing it if there are different ways of doing it, better ways of doing it, that are more time-saving and effective and efficient. So if you have that feedback, Deputy Mayor Cashmore would be very grateful to receive it from you.
I have taken the opportunity to convey to him these thoughts, but I will continue to do so.
Thank you very much. Right, further questions? Councillor Casey.
Yeah, I understand a lot of the changes were prompted by Denise going to Parliament and other people wanting to have more time to do other things. But there's one I don't understand, and you mentioned it just before, and that was you said, and I quote, you are placing Bill Cashmore as deputy of that committee. Well, you're not placing him, you are replacing Wayne Walker.
Yes.
And I'd like to know why.
I explained that in a message I left on the phone for Wayne yesterday, and that is because the Deputy Mayor is playing a specific role in the broader housing and consenting area. That is a role that he will be liaising with government on as to how we can improve our own consenting process, because a lot of the feedback we get from government, you want us to do this, but what about the way that your system is working? And I thought that it would be valuable for him in that particular role to fulfil the role of Deputy Chair of the Regulatory Committee, so that he has a good sense of it and can act better in the liaison capacity that he is fulfilling with government in this area.
But isn't the Deputy Mayor an ex-officio member of that committee anyway, by virtue of him being the Deputy Mayor, and can he not do it from that Deputy Mayor's role?
I've expressed my preference that he should do it from the position of Deputy Chair.
What's the real reason you're dumping Wayne Walker?
I've just told you.
This is the third time. First of all, it was the two councillors off. It's the way you do things, Mr Mayor. You do not do things like this. This is not the way we work at council. What you do is you leave angry, hurt people around this table. And I'm angry and hurt on Wayne Walker's behalf that you couldn't front up to him and tell him why you didn't want him as deputy chair of the committee.
I'm sorry.
I don't accept the explanation that you have just given.
Well, you might not accept
the deputy mayor
it.
already has those roles, and he can at any time pull rank and do that necessary negotiation. What I'd like to know is why Wayne Walker has been dumped as deputy chair.
Well, I'm not going to repeat myself, councillor. I did leave a message and invited Councillor Walker to get back to me. Likewise.
Message left yesterday.
No, look, please.
Yesterday.
I did not interrupt
Yesterday.
you. I did not interrupt you. Of course, that's when I made the final decisions. Equally, both I and my staff invited you to have a discussion with me, and you declined to have that discussion. Now, that was your choice. I respect that, but that's not my responsibility that we didn't have the discussion that I was looking to have with you.
You wanted to talk to me about my committees. I have no problem with my committee. I told you that.
Sorry,
I really have a real problem.
Excuse me.
I have a real problem with other parts of the report.
We'll stick to the
We're
subject,
going.
please.
I'm sorry.
Put the
Look,
motion.
No one's talked to it yet.
I've got other people there that wish to raise questions, so I'll give them the
My second
opportunity to
question
do so.
relates to the Value for Money Committee, which you've now taken off the agenda. But, you know, if you are proposing a new committee with delegations that are really quite important, and you are choosing the members of that committee, it's kind of a bit rich not to ask for volunteers or to assume that other councillors don't want to be part of it. And so my amendment, which I was putting up today, was for that to be a committee of the whole. It's way too important to have 5 or 6 or 7 hand-picked members. It's way too important.
As you'll see on item C in my recommendations, I am proposing that I will have further discussions with councillors on that. let me say that at the moment we have a political working group on value for money. That actually is a working group. I'm not sure on working groups whether any council can attend. I don't think you can on working groups, but certainly you can on committees. And councillor, you know better than most, because you're conscientious in doing it, that any councillor has the opportunity to attend any meeting, any committee meeting of council, and I encourage members to do so where they have an interest. And secondly, any value for money committee would be reporting back. Its decisions are not, as committee of the whole decisions are, final decisions. They're decisions that are reported back to another body, either to the governing body or to finance and performance. So the decisions will remain with this body, the committee of the whole or the governing body.
If I might just respond to that, as an ex officio member of all committees, you will have no experience of what it's like to sit in a committee and not have a vote. And I do that all the time. And I don't intend to do that in the Value for Money Committee or working group or whatever.
I think if you look at the terms of reference, if people are on ex officio, we give them the option to, or we decide whether there will be a vote or not a vote. Councillor, all I can say is that I know that on the committees such as...
No,
Sorry, am I talking to you or...
It's incorrect.
Well, sorry, we'll just move on. Councillor Mike Lee.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In terms of my position on the Community Safety Committee, I'm not too sure how I even got onto that committee, but I think I could add better value if I was to move from that committee to the Treaty of Waitangi Settlement Working Party, where I served in previous terms of council.
Okay, I'm not going to make decisions, obviously, Councillor, on the fly now, but if you would like to come and talk to me about that, I'm happy to listen to what you have to say on it. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure, just have a question around the workshops. When are we going to have the opportunity to participate in workshops through teleconferencing? And the background to that is I often find it incredibly resource inefficient to have to come into council and just basically have a one-way conversation of officers often communicating information to me that I can much more efficiently receive at home or somewhere else through modern technology. Yep. And I've sat in other cities that do this, that have the technology, and it's incredibly embarrassing when people ask me, why can't you do that? And I have to say, well, frankly, we're not up to it. And I've been raising this now for some years, since the beginning of the first term. So this is the 7th year I've been raising this issue in this council.
Okay.
So I'd just like to know when.
Interesting point. Can I ask Marguerite to speak to that point, please?
So we have been looking at putting video conferencing technology in this room as part of an overall technology upgrade. It is difficult because of the nature of the building, the heritage part of the building, and the costs, but we are in the process of developing a business case to try and get that upgrade here. We're talking significant amounts of money. We don't have, so it's a work in progress, Councillor, but I cannot tell you when we'll be able to deliver.
Okay, well, just by way of response, Mr Mayor.
Yep, please, Councillor.
Almost all of our workshops are not held here. They're held on level 26. And that building was recently fitted out, and I would have thought the technology was in place. And if the technology is not in place, I can supply the technology myself at my cost. I will go the extra distance. I'm not asking the organisation to do much. So the ball's back in the organisation's court, because on my part, I can certainly supply things my end.
Okay, thank you. I think we've registered your point there, Councillor. Councillor John Watson.
I want to speak to the recommendations.
To the recommendation? Oh, you want to speak rather than ask questions?
Yep.
Yep, that's fine. Councillor Simpson, question or speech?
Question, thank
Question.
you, Your Worship. I just want to know, the thing that sort of bothers me about the workshops, and I'm looking for an answer, is that you go to a workshop and you ask questions, and then the people who aren't there, it gets all relitigated in the actual meeting. Is there any way that they can, is there any way that can be bypassed? It seems for those who do attend, it's sort of the whole thing is discussed twice. So how can we work that, that we either do it once or at least, you know, I feel a frustration when I feel I've been to a workshop and discussed something only to turn around and spend another 3 hours relitigating it again.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It is frustrating for those of us that attend the workshops then sometimes to have a series of questions asked because somebody hasn't been able to attend the workshop. I don't think that there is a way of avoiding that other than by encouraging every councillor where they can to attend the workshops because, you know, the staff put a lot of time into the presentations at the workshops, and it can be pretty debilitating, if that's the right word, when you have a presentation and there may be 9, 10, 11 councillors present, when ideally you'd like to have 20 councillors present. Now, I say that in the knowledge that not everybody can attend all workshops, and you know, people are busy, but where you can, you know, to pick up Councillor Fletcher's point, we shouldn't be having workshops that don't serve a purpose, but where they do serve a purpose, everybody should endeavour to get there. Right, we have no further questions, but it's an opportunity for people to exercise their speaking rights. And
Sorry, Your
Councillor
Worship,
John
just a
Watson.
question.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Yep.
I look, just clarification around the ex officio.
Yep.
I think, and if I stand correct, that the ex officio does not have a vote at the committee.
If I can refer
I just
you...
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's a valid question, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the changes proposed on page 3 under attachment B is an ex officio member may either have full voting rights or voting rights for some of the responsibilities of the committee as stated in the terms of reference. So I think you're right. It is frustrating when you're ex officio and you're participating but not voting. So I'd like to have that discretion.
Yep.
Marguerite?
So just to clarify, and the reason these words were added in the terms of reference is with regards to Member Taipere becoming a member of the Appointments and Chief Executive Performance Committee, where he will have voting rights for appointments, but he will not have voting rights for matters relating to the Chief Executive Performance. So this is the specific reason why we inserted those words. Just to clarify, if ex officio members have voting rights on committees, if councillors are not members of a committee, they can attend, but they cannot vote.
I know.
Right. So therefore, then they just supplement. Therefore, they are not ex officio, are they?
No, they may or may not be. Some
Right.
people, was raised earlier that the Deputy Mayor could go to something ex officio, or for that matter, me. And this is specific, but I think it could be looked at more generally. In terms of voting rights for other members, I mean, that's something that I'm willing to entertain discussion on at some point. But, you know, from all of my experience, where members attend committees that they're not a member of, they are treated, well, when I'm in the chair, I try to treat them, Councillor Casey, with equal respect and give them equal rights to ask questions. And generally, if it's an appointment if it's in a committee like Appointments and Review, we're not taking things by votes, we're seeking to get consensus, which I think is the best way of doing it at a committee level where the numbers are small enough to do that.
There was just a discussion between yourself and Councillor Casey, and it was said that I am ex officio of the committee, and that was the clarification I sought.
Yep.
Because Councillor Casey is not ex officio of any of the committees.
No, I
so,
accept
so
that.
that's the clarification that I wanted. And also, just one more question, Your Worship, and this question is around videotaping or Skyping into a meeting, not a workshop, but into a meeting. And I think for reasons under our standing orders, we've changed that if you can't be here for you're on council business and some others, is that you can actually Skype in to the particular meeting, because I see that in the report under the red and the attachment there is a paragraph there or sentence saying that you can't, and it's not allowable. But
We would just get some clarification
yeah,
from
but
Marguerite on
so,
that.
So Marguerite, I without going through the agenda again, which I will as we get comments, but just to confirm that you can Skype in if you're on council business into committee meetings.
So the standing orders, not the
Yep.
terms of reference,
yeah.
but the standing orders do have a provision for Skyping in. We included it last time
Yes.
the governing body reviewed it, but we don't have the technical capability.
I understand that, but there is an ability for those, and that only applies to committee of the whole?
Let me get back to you in a minute.
Thank you. I think it does only apply to the committee of the whole and not for any of the subcommittees that we have, because they're not televised.
Okay, I mean, I think at some point in the future we can have a wider discussion about the pros and cons of being able to Skype in. Obviously, if a member can't make it, that's good. There will be some members, I'm not sure what I feel about it personally, that it's nicer to have the face-to-face contact and see a person and then know that they're engaging and how they're engaging than doing it at distance.
Right. We've currently got understanding orders, as Margaret
it's an
said,
understanding orders.
but yeah.
That's the clarification.
And yes, in the standing orders, it's for all committees.
All
not-
committees. Thank you.
Another question, Councillor Sayers, before we go to comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. My question's just around your political structures in terms of your cabinet, and I just want to confirm that you've got a cabinet, Mr. Mayor, and the other thing is in terms of...
I keep my clothes in it.
Closing it, yeah.
The main reason for my question, Mr. Mayor, is the cabinet, is the definition of your cabinet, of the committees of the whole, the chairs and the deputy chairs formulate your cabinet, and maybe is that your definition, or do you have a cabinet of that you've politically decided upon, and you're trying to put those people into those positions?
First of all, it's not a cabinet. Secondly, it is a committee of chairs, and to date it has consisted of the chairs and deputy of the committees of the whole, plus the deputy mayor and myself. And what we do in that is tend to look at what's on the agenda for the different committees during the week, and it's a way of trying to get some coherence in our business. Give it the mystique of being a cabinet, it would be a totally different body, but it's a chance for chairs to, you know, the lead item in each chair's meeting is, well, we've got a planning committee this week, Councillor Darby, what can you report to us on what you're bringing to the planning committee meeting, or whatever the committee might be.
So is that the place for the coordination of workshops, maybe?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Well, thank you. I just heard the word cabinet mentioned.
I have seen it used myself. It's not a term that I use.
It's not in the
Councillor.
circle.
Right. Any further questions? If not, we'll go to comments. Councillor Watson, sorry to keep you waiting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll just constrain my comments to the recommendation C as it goes to the revised terms of reference for the committees. I understand the changes necessitated by the departure of a former colleague, Councillor Denise Lee, who's cutting a fine figure in Parliament, I might add, and wish her all the very best there. But however, in amongst those revised terms of reference, one does stand out as being rather peculiar. I think it has been alluded to by Councillor Casey in her questioning, and that goes to this rather unusual change of the guard that has occurred within the Regulatory Committee. And I wish to make it very clear, I cast no aspersions on Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore, who I've been personally very impressed with in his conduct of various business on behalf of the council. My concern is more to the treatment of my Albany Ward colleague, Councillor Wayne Walker. In the explanation that I heard, Mr. Mayor, in response to Councillor Casey's questions, this move was apparently prompted by the desire to see the Deputy Mayor fulfil a role that in some way reflects his other activities to do with building and consenting. I would say, with all due respect, that it's hard to imagine how the somewhat less than onerous deputy chair role of the regulatory committee would add a huge amount of experience or expertise or valuable information to fulfilling that wider role on behalf of the council. That I think might best be described as being somewhat unconvincing as a reason. I think I would say there, if I was being fair. Also less than impressive, Mr. Mayor, is the manner in which this has apparently been conveyed to Councillor Walker. I would suggest to you that a message on an answer phone the day before the meeting wouldn't quite meet the target of informed or mature conversation or dialogue or discussion with the affected party. In fact, I think that might be more accurately characterised as being somewhat tardy or thoughtless at best, given that someone's being removed from a position of authority at a public meeting. So I would echo Councillor Casey's view, and this is what really concerns me, if it is indeed the case, is that this has been prompted by something else. I know that given your very busy program, you're not an attender at the regulatory committee, so I would be curious to know where the lack of assessment or lack of appreciation of the role that Councillor Walker has fulfilled in filling in as chair when the chair has been away doesn't seem to have been taken into account in any shape or form. So I find it rather disturbing that a colleague of mine can be treated in that way. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's shown him the courtesy the position deserves, and I think it probably raises a concern for a number of other councillors around here that something could happen like this in the way that it did happen.
Thank you. I've listened to what you've said. I've given my explanation. When I ring many of you, and many of you I can't get hold of, and I do leave messages on the answer phone. I've left messages on the answer phone for you, John, and to others, and I always invite people to get back to me, and they have the opportunity to do that. But, you know, on a couple of issues yesterday, I tried to ring people 2 or 3 times, couldn't get hold of them. I don't have a lot of time in my day, so I do that. But the invitation is always there, and people are always welcome to come in and have a talk to me about any problem that they have. And you know that, you're welcome to do it yourself. So I have the role of making decisions about committee memberships. That's a responsibility placed on me, and I exercise that responsibility on due consideration as I deem appropriate. Okay. Further comments? Councillor Newman.
Chair, Your Worship, I want to try and keep this high level as well, because I too have some concern about the process around the Deputy Chair of the Regulatory Committee, because when I was first heard of this, I understood, well, I assumed this had been an agreed exercise. So other comments have been expressed, and I will leave it there. But at a high level, Your Worship, and it was a bit of a metaphor when I came in this morning and heard Christmas songs being played by Councillor Filipina, which was quite nice, and he noted the look on my face.
Councillor Casey's ready to sing again.
I am concerned, and I made the reference then and also to Councillor Hills before, that to me, coming to the end of this year, the relationships and the mood and the atmosphere around this table is not good. I liken it to scene 5 in Hamlet, where Claudius and Laertes and Hamlet die, and it's all very bloody and tragic. It is the classic Greek tragedy. And I worry because I am concerned that whilst we can have a committee structure and we can have a program of works that on the face of it
is quite inclusive and quite egalitarian in what we do, that, you know, the power relationships around this table don't lend itself to the